Ladies and gentlemen, that's who we love and that's who we serve. Happy Monday. Today is Monday, November 14th, 2022. Shout out. Happy birthday to my 21-year-old daughter today. Happy birthday, Anna. I'm Alan C. We got Johnnie J in the house. We'll be joined by Judge Joe Brown on the DBInnervisionFM universe momentarily.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are here live and in person. And so I had Judge Joe Brown tested before Friday. So hopefully he got that all settled, and he'll be here momentarily. But let's intro our sponsors. Oh, and we want you to like, share this show. We got I went back and I looked at the yay and not to yay, and that got about 900 views so far. so it's like, it's climbing up there. And then it's just climbing up there. So it just showed that the top shows that we're up and going.
That's really cool. In addition to listener supported, we are sponsor supported as well. Christian Brothers Moving Company in Phoenix, in Texas, and in the great state of Colorado as well. They can help with the moving type needs that you might have throughout the nation. We got Richard Damiano, Littleton Eye Clinic. He's a corneal consultant. He and his staff will be able to help you with cosmetic needs and visual needs that you may have as well. We got the Denver Arts Foundation, the Colorado Art Relief Fund, and Wells Fargo Foundation. I think I got that wrong. Denver Foundation. Yeah, that's what it was. Well, Johnny, it's Monday morning.
Yes. Okay. And and then also we need your support. PayPal.me/InnervisionDenver. That's PayPal.me/InnervisionDenver. And you can support us with any amount. If you do 35 or more, we'll send you a T-shirt for that donation. Just make sure you put your size and of course a mailing address with zip code and all that kind of stuff, so we can get it out to you. And but if you're in Europe, it costs about $35 to $40. So the donation level is going to have to be a little bit higher for that, just because we have to send it, overseas and everything like that. So hey, it is what it is, and so hey, we got it under control. Also, let's see what else. It was something else. Judge Joe Brown, he has his barbecue, it's all natural BBQ, and if you just Google Judge Joe Brown barbecue, you will see that. And I like barbecues also on my beans, and sometimes I make mashed potatoes. I'll put it on that and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a barbecue fan. So anyway, so our main this topic about the music business, and you sometimes you wonder, why do they get these young people, and sometimes if the parents is there, it most likely will work out a little bit better. But if you have a kid there and you need a consent form, I mean, that's what, when Barry Gordy signed Stevie Wonder, he said, oh man, it's like, okay, Stevie Wonder's 11, 12 years old, and he had to go through the parents and parental guidance and all that kind of stuff. And then to sign them. And then when the Jackson 5 came along, then they said, oh man, I got to deal with that, the parental guidance and all that kind of stuff. And so, the lady, when I saw the movie, she got it through where, he went ahead and he went ahead and signed them. And then, of course, the competition was the Osmond brothers, and Dick Clark was sort of like involved with that, with the management of the Osmond brothers. Huh?
And had that whole American Bandstand thing going.
Right. So then you see like, okay, going back to like when this music started going and it was race music and all that kind of stuff, and how some of the record companies were kind of like underhanded a little bit as far as like how would I say, would handle like paying the artists, and they would have
they would not put certain things within the contract, or they would leave things out.
Or they would put things in the contract that were legal terms that most 17, 15, 16, and parents who are almost as illiterate couldn't understand and didn't have a money to hire a entertainment lawyer to say, well, this is not in your best interest if you leave this in, and you should take this out. And then a lot of the people, when they sign, even with Prince, they sign over their masters, right? Even though they could do all the producing and all that kind of stuff themselves, they sign over their masters, and it was almost like a forever kind of thing. And then you had to go renegotiate because the record company was putting up all this money up front, giving you these advances. And some people took advantage of that, used a lot of it. Some people said no. Like in the case of NWA, Ice Cube's father got a hold of him and said, "No, I don't think you should sign that contract. You're doing a lot more. You could be paid a lot more." And so he held out, and the other guys, Dr. Dre had his baby's mama was complaining about, we're sleeping on your auntie's couch. We need a house, and $70,000 at that time sounded like a lot of money. That was in the early 80s. So yeah, $70,000, okay, that'll get my child and the baby's mom a place and us a place. And then what was Ice Cube? He had his woman going on. And he was generating babies all over the world. And that was going to eventually cut into his income if he lived longer. And then it was another guy. And I don't remember his name. But it was another guy who was the DJ in the back, which is a shame, because I was a DJ, so I should remember the DJ, but I don't. I think it was Light something. But anyway, so the three of them took the $75,000, and then in the movie, Ice Cube went into the office and he started breaking stuff up because he said, no, he didn't take the offer. He went with this other company. And he tried to screw him over the same way that the other company did. And he went in the office and he just started breaking things with the bat and said, I own this. Because he had a hit album, I'm Gonna Knock You Out. So he had a hit album, boom, boom. And so he knew there was money and they should be paying him. And the guy goes, well, I don't know, I can't do anything. And he said, okay, then I'm going to break everything in this office. And then they came back and said, okay, I guess we can do something. And then they sat down and then they ironed out the contract, and he got paid more than $75,000 for that deal.
The music industry can get pretty wild, I'll tell you that. That's for sure, man. I mean, wow.
Yeah. And then you got people like Suge Knight, who took, I guess he was negotiating with Eminem at one point, and supposedly, I guess he hung Eminem out the window to get him to do what he wanted to do. And Suge Knight was out of control. He was a big guy, and he used intimidation, huh?
Big guy.
Yeah, and he used intimidation. And then I heard with Eazy-E, he wanted to get Dr. Dre out of that contract, and so he wanted Dr. Dre on death row, and so he got him in the office, and according to the movie, he started punching. He had his guys punching Eazy-E in the face until he signed the paper that let Dr. Dre out of his contract. And then Dr. Dre, then Eazy-E went over to the manager, and the manager came and he thought it was a burglar because, who's sitting at my porch, He didn't know it was Eazy-E. And so he took out his gun and, gonna say, whoever this is, And then Eazy-E and the manager said, what happened to your face? He says, I'm going to go kill Suge Knight. And he says, wait a minute. Yeah, I know you're mad. I know this is crazy, but there's other ways to handle this other than killing somebody.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's for sure gig.
And I think our guest has arrived.
You are absolutely correct. Well, we want the show. Yeah. Joe Brown, Judge Joe Brown. How you doing this morning?
Morning. How you guys doing?
Doing well. We were just giving a history of management and how some artists screwed over, and in the movie, how Ice Cube didn't take the $75,000 and why Dr. Dre had to, because he had a baby's mom and she was sleeping on the auntie's couch, and that was getting to be a cramped style. So
we're laying the groundwork.
That sounds like it.
Yeah. Yes. So, but I was listening to you on another show, and you were talking about something, and it's stuff that I speculated on, but you went and did the research, because I'm thinking when we had the Civil War and all that stuff, I'm thinking these Democratic boys, they were upset because they wanted that sexual side booty, that if their wife said no, they can just go out back and get the booty from there. Then when they had kids, they made those the house, in, and then when the black colleges came along, they said, well, we can't put them in school with our white kids, so let's make a separate college, and started up the Negro college and put them there. But then so I'm just speculating, right? Because I know Manalo people didn't come to be because there was black guys out there, getting with white ladies. It was because the master was back there, because he had control of them completely, and he could do whatever he wanted, right? But then you were Dr. Judge Joe Brown, you were saying something about how a guy was going around with this pamphlet on how to control.
Oh no! What I was saying was this: half century ago, I was with a DC think tank as an intern, and one of my assignments was essentially to research what were called slave pamphlets that were on microfilm in the Library of Congress, and there were a whole bunch of them. They started off from the turn of the 18th century, and they went up to the Civil War, and they were basically how to raise Negroes for fun and profit. So there was a lot of stuff in there.
A lot of fun.
And it was dynamics about how to put the elements of slavery into the slave's culture. So over the generations, trying to be good parent or whatever it may be, the slave was made a slave by the parent that was trying to raise them. They compared it to horses, and I do know that from raising horses, that if you wean a foal from the mother and you take her away, you have a hard time domesticating the horse, or a harder time domesticating the horse than if you leave the foal with the mother and let her domesticate the horse, and you have a lot easier job. So that's what they were doing. And there's all kinds of really wicked stuff in there.
And I read from Frederick Douglass that they would, on Christmas time, they would let the slaves just go into debauchery with drinking and all that stuff. And then and then they would come, they would let them have that time, and then the slave would say, wow, if we were left to our own demise, we would, it's not fun with this hangovers and all that stuff. And they would come back and say, thank you, master, for letting us, for showing us what would happen if we were free to do whatever we
It's
want.
the habit and pattern of thinking that is dangerous. And today we have had 50 years worth of the most profound propaganda engine that has ever existed being turned to glorifying dysfunction and essentially destroying the fabric of the society, because there are those who don't like what the society is about and they have something else they'd want to get into, and it helps them if there is no order and everything is chaotic, because that gives them an opportunity to do what they want to do. Since it's driven by selfish motives, that's not good for anyone.
And some of the tools they use is I guess the media, because I mean I used to think that, you know, if you saw it on the news, they were biased.
Well, unfortunately, what's going on is we have too few media outlets. Actually, every large city or town used to have several newspapers competing for the attention of the subscribers or for the purchasers. And one of the main methods of securing people who would buy your product would be to convince them you're being objective. See, you tried to be as accurate as you could in the reporting of the news, and then you had the editorial section of your paper that commented on it and interpreted it. Now that started really going downhill with the Hearst news empire, who essentially invented what was known as yellow journalism, because the paper they used was so cheap it tended to be yellow. And we saw it come to the fore for the Spanish-American War, 1898, where Randolph Hearst had it put out that the Maine was blown up by Cuban saboteurs, when actually what the Navy determined had happened to it was there was spontaneous ignition of some faulty coal in the coal bunkers, which were being used as kind of armor for the magazines. So you got a fire right next to the gunpowder magazine, boom, you get an explosion.
Sure. Yeah.
But he wanted the war because he thought the U.S. should get involved in imperialism. And we have the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and a number of other places now as a result. And the rest is history.
Yeah. So now, okay, so now they get control of the media, so they can feed us whatever we want. Then they have to put people in there to help along with the chaos, like this Nobel bonds and where you let the criminals back into those neighborhoods that could least afford or have the less political activism or power.
Well, yeah. Let me say something on that. I only had a half century of involvement in this stuff, but let's just say
yes.
There was a developed mechanism that in various states was called pretrial investigation, investigative services, pretrial release, and they would investigate to determine if somebody who had been arrested was a likely candidate for being a person who would show back up on his honor to dispose of the matter. Everybody's presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt under our law. Some people forget that. In any event, what happens is that resulted in what's commonly known as an ROR, release on your own recognizance.
Right.
Okay. Now, that means the person will show up. If you're someone has fewer connections to the community, then you set a bond. If it looks like the charges are so serious that they aren't likely to show up when there's no consequence and will just take off into the sunset, you start ramping up the bond. Now, in most places, that bond can be paid by the defendant himself putting up cash. But also, they have a thing called a surety bond, which has an interesting backstory, and that is the bonding company is usually bankrolled by a bank or insurance company, and they have on deposit with the criminal court clerk's office certain sums of money or certificates guaranteeing that anything that will come up will be paid. And if they put the bond up, which has historically been for 10%, in other words, the bond's $10,000. If you agree to put up 1,000 with the bonding company, they'll make the bond and they will get sureties, grandmama, uncle, mom, brothers and sisters, co-workers, whatever it may be.
Right.
And what happens is if the person shows up, then they get their 10%. And a lot of times they set it up so you can pay the 10% in installments. If they don't, then they're coming after grandmama's house. And the theory is that you're not going to be low down enough for your grandmama to lose her house or your mama to lose her house. So you show back up. If you don't show back up, they have to pay the 10,000 into the clerk's office. So rather than do that, they send out a bounty hunter. Now, aside from the crap that they had on Dog the Bounty Hunter, which is kind of lightweight stuff, 1876, they had a Supreme Court decision that said a bounty hunter armed with an active warrant may cross state lines armed and retrieve or take into custody the suspect and return them for the completion of the proceedings. Now, that's what the law has been for 150 years. 140 years. So it's nothing new. But people want to act like, oh, wow, whoopee, it's prejudicial. And I know that a lot of my clients never had a job, flat broke, busted, but relatives put the bond up. They may have had money on the side too, but everybody basically has an opportunity to make bond unless it's a very high one because of the nature of the crime. Now, I'll give you an anecdote.
Okay.
Woman is on my stand testifying when I was a criminal court judge here in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
And she was saying, Judge, I can't make this bond. I've made 4 of them in the last year, and I can't make number 5. So I'm inquiring with her. I'm saying, well, why would the court be disposed to reduce the bond for the 5th episode? Well, he's been a good boy. He's never done anything bad to me. He's always done what I want. I said, well, like what? She told me. It was basically whenever she needed money, he gave it to her. I said, well, now it seems he dropped out of the 5th grade. He's never had a job. So how do you suppose he's going to get you this money? Well, the Lord works in mysterious ways. I never asked.
Wow.
Okay, well, he's been a good boy. He's 19 now. And between the time he's been 15, he's had 37 serious felonies. He's been a major crime wave. How can you say he's not good? Well, he never gave her any problems, the way she looked at it. Right. So she was one of those, interestingly enough, her granddaughter was coming out shouting about we need to get rid of cash bonds, but her granddaddy, her great-granddaughter was hollering recently about we don't need to have bonds. And her granddaddy, who, by the way, isn't even in his mid-40s yet, was the one that they were talking about when I had all this mess in my courtroom. So, you see, it's all a matter of perspective. And the news media is not even telling the people how this bond thing works so they can make informed decisions. Because frankly, most of the people that write about it for the newspapers don't know either. They're just too damn lazy and myopic about what they do. They get on a cause. It looks good, defund the police, and
Sure.
they put it out that everybody's for this, Black Lives Matter and everything else. And if you went to the neighborhood in question, you
Absolutely.
would find that there are 99 people out there who don't agree with that, because they say, hey, I just got ripped off. Somebody burglarized my place, and, you know, I've got to work 2 jobs to restore my place, or somebody broke into my car. Somebody fired 3 shots, and my grandchildren are sleeping in the bathtub for armor, so they don't get killed by a stray bullet in a nighttime drive-by. See, it's a different perspective, but there is an agenda, and that agenda is the more chaos you have in general society, the more people pay attention to that, or their rules and principles break down, and they don't pay much attention to what you're doing.
Now, in Denver, we have a district attorney that says, because we're number 1 for carjacking here in Denver, and or in Colorado, and the district attorney says, until they commit the 3rd stealing of a car, we won't do anything about it. And
Now think about that. What the devil's going on with a DA that says that, and how inept and inefficient is that DA's office? You don't give a damn whether this is the person's 3rd offense, 4th offense, when your car got burglarized, jacked up, and you've got $1,000 deductible with your insurance company, and all of the inconvenience and everything else, and having to pay for a rental car, maybe, or not reporting it so your insurance payment doesn't go up. You don't want to hear that.
Yeah, and so what is happening is it's like they keep them for maybe 12 hours, 18 hours, then they're back to go do it again. And then sometimes it's escalated. And then sometimes these guys, if they have a gun, they might shoot the person. As they shot this one lady, they jacked her car and decided to shoot her because, hey, they're getting away with it anyway. And they just go back out again.
See, this is another thing too. I have a principle, and I'm running for mayor in Memphis. And the principle is this: you shouldn't represent an area if you can't walk amongst your constituents without an armed guard. Now, I was the criminal court judge. I was putting people in jail or letting them out, setting their sentences, but I could always walk in every neighborhood in the Memphis area because the people who live there thought I was, let's say, something like a village chieftain protecting what they were about and protecting their lives and property, and also trying to make the situation get better by using the authority and power that you had with that office to impose some changes in the people that you were dealing with. So in other words, okay, you don't have a job. Well, I can tell you to go get a job, but I know that you don't have that discipline, that work ethic, that habit of getting up and going someplace on a reliable and regular basis. So what I do is I start putting you in some programs where you get the habit, and I start giving you some incentives. So if you do what I want, you'll prosper. If you don't, there's immediate pain. I used the power of the office so that I could play the father that was missing from the home, or the fatherhood that was missing from the neighborhood. So it made a difference. And over a 10-year period, they did a study, and statewide, the statewide recidivism rate remained about 80%, but in my courtroom, it dropped down to just 18. So what is the secret? You did something which is to give each individual a purpose and a cause. Now, that sounds really far out. Well, what is that going to be? Well, how about just manhood or womanhood? So every morning, the person looks in the mirror and says, did you do what you were supposed to do as a man yesterday? Are you going to do it today? Are you going to prepare so you'll be a better man tomorrow? Your life may look bleak from where you are now, but it does the same for other people unless you change it. So it's your duty and responsibility to do so. And hell, you can be a hero if you clear out the smoking flames in the tunnel that you can't see the daylight at the end of and slay the fire-breathing Gila monsters that are in there, you become a hero. And when you
Yes.
get that cause, say you now have a purpose in life and you don't whine about, I'm going to be dead at 24. What the devil difference does it make? I might as well die, take somebody down and engage in what I call suicide by neighbor, which is a version of suicide by cop, which is a version of suicide by drugs. There are drugs have claimed another victim in downtown Denver or such and such suburb of Denver. No, some junkie knew it was going to kill him, and it wasn't about getting high. It was trying to die, but it was socially acceptable.
That's right. Right.
And we're number 2 in fentanyl deaths between the ages of 18 and 45 here in Colorado.
That's a dangerous drug. Let me tell you about that. If anybody's listening, I had cancer, throat cancer last year, and I went through 8.5 weeks of chemotherapy and radiation therapy every day of the week and chemo once a week. I had 3rd-degree burns on the outside of my neck and inside my throat. That hurt.
Wow.
They prescribed fentanyl for me, and it says in red on the outside of the dosage sheets, it says this is only to be prescribed when ordinary opiates have limited effect. And it notes that if you do not have severe pain, 1, 2 to 3 doses are sufficient to cause your addiction. It's not a good high. You take that stuff, it works, and you sit down, try to go to sleep before you do something stupid. It says on there that it is going to suppress your respiratory functions, George Floyd situation. Yeah. So anyway, you know what a 30-day supply cost me for a copay?
800 maybe?
62 cents.
Wow.
What?
62 cents for a 30-day supply. And the 30-day supply was in a little stick-on thing, looked like a small Band-Aid that was good for 3 days. And there are fools that actually take those things and chew them so they can get a super high, and they die. And they have bunches of these things, dosages in hospitals, and orderlies steal them because, you know,
well, they're easy to get out.
Especially when it's got an intensive care unit set up, there's that need for people in intense pain. And stuff is coming across the border and it's being smuggled in large quantities. And that's some horrible stuff. I mean, I used it, and, you know, I still have a lot I just burned and threw away because I said, I don't need this stuff. This is, no.
Well, our governor here, Polis, who's, I mean, he lies like nobody's business. He put together like a bill where they made it a misdemeanor. Then they had to walk it back because the community was shouting so loud. He walked it back and then made like, if you had enough to kill 500 people, that would become a felony, but it isn't, you know. So he walked it back, and then people, because we have amnesia here in Colorado, we said, hey, he did a good thing, but he was the one who made it a misdemeanor in the first place, then had to walk it back.
That's because people don't pay attention to what's going on. So it's like somebody reduced the federal government's allocation to certain institutions from $570 billion down to zero, and then they re-implemented it to the tune of 70 billion. So that's almost 500 billion cut off. But people go, oh my God, this administration, they pushed for $70 billion. But what about the 500 billion they caught off to this particular college and university suite?
That's right. That's right.
Right.
You know, we're talking about the media. We're talking a lot about how things work, different projects that have been foisted on us for, the last 150 years in some instances. And the way to get around that is really it's love. Without love, we ain't got nothing. In the book of 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 and 8, it really talks a lot about that. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. And honestly, I mean, when I read these scriptures and, they talk about love, and it doesn't have to be that squishy kind of love, where you just love pizza or you love rainbows or you love all this. No, we're talking about the true love that lifts somebody up and allows for all ships to rise upon the tides of success. So, when you talk about how you operated your courtroom, Judge, and you mentioned how you first started with giving the person the tools, the programs, the things that were necessary to help them out. Now, oftentimes you'd run into folks, I'm sure, that would be like, no, I don't want your programs. I don't want your systems. I don't want your stuff. How would you reach those folks?
Well, okay, here's the deal.
Hmm.
See, in the context of the scripture you quote, love becomes a motivational factor. You just don't sit on a couch and love your family.
That's right.
You get up off of the couch because you love your family, and you go to work even if you're not feeling well, so you don't miss the wages. You feel
That's
like
right.
buying a new pair of tennis shoes, but you don't, because you have to put something together put something away for your children. You want to go buy bling to hang out with your homies, but you don't, because you need it for insurance.
That's right.
So that's love is a motivation. One of the problems we have right now is the terminology that we have been conditioned to accept over the last 50 years. And when you have a language, the language determines to a great extent how you spin things when you think about them.
Absolutely.
And language has come up to the point where it's being manipulated and it's being used, and you have certain words and phrases that have become common in the lexicon. And when you think in terms of those things, you have a big problem. All right. Myself and Dana Cumberlander, the real Dana, we do a Twitter space. So we had some trolls that were deep off into the rainbow thing, and we had some other people that were on. And it got interesting because the other people that were on represented gays against grooming.
Wow.
So this group of gays were very disturbed about the language, the phrases, and the words used by the trolls. And it was interesting just backing off and listening to them go at each other, where one is looked at as a betrayer of the cause, and the other one is saying you're a lowlife, so you're trying to get a hold of and recruit these children. So keep your hands off.
Right.
So the other thing that was interesting is to listen to this, where you would assume everybody that's gay is a supporter of LGBTQ. Well, you have this group saying the LGBTQ is a cult, and no, everybody doesn't agree with it because of some of the other things. But you see, in mainstream media, they have taken what is arguably, according to one side, a cult, and made it a universal thing. So anytime you get somebody that says this over here, you assume he means this over there. And it's like, one of them told me, so Judge, you're right. You say, I don't care what you do in your bedroom, get your freak on. That's your business. But when you start talking about taking children 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and start trying to get them to what shall we say, spay themselves or neuter themselves and cut it all off, and they've never had whatever it is, an erection, to even know what the devil you're talking about.
Right.
Something's going way wrong, because adults don't need to sexualize children for any purpose, gay or straight. But here you go, la-di-do.
Yeah.
And you have let's take the dynamic of that. You have the transgender bunch that dress up in drag. That's what we used to call it. And they present themselves to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. And they know that the children are most receptive to women, and they look like women to the children. They have no idea, no clue what sexual apparatus is about. So this is a woman or grandmama, but it's dressed like what in actuality is the madam of a whorehouse. So that's a negative image on the women, but you get these children brought in by conscientious young mothers who have careers, but they want their children to get that jump start in academia so they can succeed in the world downstream in time. And you take them to listen to this drag queen read to them. And what winds up happening is human children are most responsive to the female until they get to be 7. That's basic educational philosophy that school teachers used to get taught. And it was even embraced in the Boy Scouting programs where you had Cub Scouts with a den mother until they got 7. Then they became Webelos, and you tried to bring men in because at that point they become responsive to men. But if they're being taught to be non-responsive to men, then that doesn't happen. So you get a vicious circle. Now, why is the man thing important? Well, you hear phrases like this called toxic masculinity. 55 years ago on UCLA's campus, I heard that just thrown out is it is an objective to get the country to think of masculinity as toxic, but what they call toxic masculinity is actually its absence. Now, you live in Colorado, you've got elk all over the place. If you go through Aspen, I used to live up there, they have these huge herds of elk, and people go out to hunt the elk, all right? And they taste good when prepared appropriately. And you have to go through a whole lot of hassle to get a permit to go hunt one, in addition to the ordinary hunting license. But when you get these elk, you're being reflected as a hunter. So you are a hunter, you kill. And as a matter of fact, we're the best hunters the planet has ever seen. So we kill with great alacrity and with great skill and talent. So how do you control this predator from killing itself? Well, you impose the precepts and principles of masculinity. You put it in the boy's head that it's his duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, to make where he lives a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics. It is his duty and obligation to be a man of public peace, dignity, and order who can be brave and courageous when necessary. So you get somebody that seeks to have an orderly world around him, who does what is necessary to provide protection and provision for those he is responsible for. You take that away and you get a wild animal that is a stone cold killer. Now, there is an analysis that you could do about all of these creeps that shoot up the hallways. And invariably, when you look at them, they don't have a sound masculine socialization quotient. They haven't had fatherhood put into them. Well, they haven't encountered effective fatherhood to give them that masculinity. The ones that lay around talking about love and what that means to them is finding some women or a woman to take care of them instead of going out and providing and protecting that woman. That's not love. That's just trash, and that's a lack of masculinity. You put that into the male and he becomes a man. And there's another thing. Men are no good, so-and-so. Well, let's back off a bit. See, man and manhood do not reflect the status you get just because you reach a certain age. You have to earn that. So when you say man, you are talking about somebody who has earned the title. Like you're in the Army or the Marine Corps and you see somebody with the stripes on the shoulders, you know, in the Smokey the Bear hat, and his boots are immaculate. Everything is crisp, and he knows what he's doing, and he's the fittest thing in there. You're in basic training. You're about to die, and he's running circles around you while you double time it. So you look at him and he puts it in you, and because he's got the indicia, the symbols and the emblems that go along with his status, you respect him because you have a good idea of what he can do, and maybe one day you'll be able to do it too. That's what masculinity and manhood are about. But you don't get that put into the boys now. They get told that they're useless, they're toxic, and they have to be something else. So women need to be women, men need to be men. They can cross over. It's like that yin yang emblem where there's a dark part and a light part, and they overlap, but one little skinny tail is where the big part of the other is, and that shows what men and women can do. But you make the girls ashamed of being a woman, full service woman, and you make the guys aspire to be ashamed of being a man and to be a woman, and you turn the women around trying to get them to aspire to be men, and you got a screwed up thing. Because I'll give you a little funny example.
Okay.
Women are always getting on us. Why don't you ever ask for directions? Stop and ask somebody for directions. And we are always going, will you please hurry up? Just buy a dozen of the damn towels. They're all going to work the same.
Jeff.
See, the shopping is gathering. That's what women used to do when they'd get out and they'd pick the berries and they'd pick the reddest ones or the most purple ones. And we'd all say, oh, honey, this is good stuff. And they would scout out, we would scout out the game trails, find the pass over into the next valley. And we did that, which is why we have this instinctual thing to find our way. That was our job. Their thing is to shop. That was their job. That's why they love it. We hate it. And that's why they hate what we do when we try to figure out how to get to this address. So now it's just stuff like that. And we've got this bipolarity going on in the system. The boys are being taught that being a man is somehow or another demeaning. And instead of being a man, this is what you ought to do. That's not very satisfactory to the male that's actually inside that boy growing up to be a man, maybe. And the girls is told that, no, honey, you should not feel impressed by this. That's demeaning. This is what you ought to do. And when they grow up, hopefully on the way to being women, what makes them feel good, they think is demeaning. What they're supposed to feel good about leaves them cold, and they aren't satisfied, and the boys aren't satisfied. And why? Because some people just hated themselves. They did not love themselves. And think of this. God made a choice. Nature made a choice. The dice throw made a choice. Daddy had 2 beers and maybe XY hooked up instead of XX. And what goes on is it's a dice throw. But when you come out with it, you have duty. And what is this popular game? The Call of Duty. So people get ashamed of what they are and they don't want to be that. So we say, wow, how can you be ashamed of yourself? You should love yourself, which is going along with your message. And you're taught, don't love yourself, want to be something else. And it doesn't work out.
Now, let's get into the propaganda of the music, because I heard this recording a long time ago, and it was somebody pretending to be Dr. Dre, and a young guy came in to give his tape to Dr. Dre, and Dr. Dre, well, this is how it is run here. You have to give up the booty, and I'm going to take your music, and I'm going to take your manhood. Now, getting into this music
sounds
thing,
like Hollywood.
And I know they were just kind of diss Dr. Dre, because I don't know the guy personally or whatever. But I'm thinking, like, in the music game, now we had, and you said something about like each generation, like the parents are not supposed to be interested in the kids music that
Yeah.
they have a different generation. But
Yeah.
now it's like 50 years of just or more.
Same old, same
Same old,
old.
same.
Everybody from 15 to 75 at the wedding reception
Yeah.
is doing the same dance to the same music. That's ridiculous. When are
Yeah.
these kids going to create something new? Why? It's stagnated. And you
Yep.
know, one of the reasons that causes it to be all over the world, young males are not getting what is necessary to become young men. It's just
That's
cut
right.
off. They're feeling the effects of this Western world effort to emasculate their populations. So when you see the gangster rap video and it looks like the guys are in charge, they eat that up, whether it's Berlin, Tokyo, whether it's Moscow, whether it's Rome, whether it's London, whether it's Paris, whether it's Washington, D.C., Chicago, wherever it may be, whether it's Denver, whether it's Los Angeles, San Francisco. The young people want to see this. And what they want is to get some masculine reinforcement. So the people that finance this don't want it changed because what is it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's right.
So we have had a 45-year run of what has become rap, and the only change is it's got more dysfunctional and it glorifies dysfunction more rigidly. And then the other thing is, I love it when the feminists start hollering, it's just some male fantasy of dominating all of these women who are dancing half naked.
What could
No,
possibly
that's
go wrong with
actually, that's not what you're looking at.
Yeah.
At all. In fact, it's kind of sick what you're looking at, but for
That's right.
a different reason. It's
Well,
an Oedipus thing, because what you're looking at, dancing half naked, is not his sexual fantasy. You're looking at his mama, his favorite aunts, their friend girls, and grandmama. And if you really got down on the level where the street cred is established, it's summertime out back of the public housing, you'll see mama, who is just 12, 14 years older than son. So son's 16. And she's what?
30,
She's what?
31, 32.
She's not 30. She's still in her 20s because she had him at 13 years old. She isn't but 27, 28. So mama's out there in her hoochie mama shorts with her butt cheeks out, top coming out of her little tied halter to make it whatever. And grandmama is 41 years old. She's out there in a little wrap skirt. She trying to get laid. All her daughters out there and their friend girls, 40 ounce in one hand, joining the other, and sending all the kids to get another beer out the fridge or cigarettes or whatever it may be. That's what they're looking at. This is like June Cleaver. And Leave It to Beaver, the old 1950 sitcom. So that's what you're looking at, and it's really sick. And I had a 17-year-old kid on my show. We did real binding arbitration, and since he was a minor, he had to have an adult. So his mother and grandmother showed up. He's 17. Mama was all of 29 years old, and she's 8 months pregnant with her sixth child. And she had on a little wrap skirt with everything showing, and a belly, bare belly, 8 months pregnant, hanging over the top, and a halter tied. I made wardrobe put her in a dress. And grandmama had just had her 12th child 4 months before we were doing this episode, and she was dressed like hoochie mama. I put her in a dress. So mama was 29 and grandmama was only 42. And here's this 17-year-old. So the producers got mad at me because I wanted to take the time to explain the facts of life to him. And unfortunately, they didn't want to put it out on the air, so they cut most of it. But in the end, I awarded him $5,000 because he got really wrong, and that was our limit. So his mother and grandmama got mad at me because I put it in an escrow account that would not be available until he got 25 years old.
Right.
So they were talking about they birthed each other and birthed him. That was their money. What did I mean? Keeping them from getting their money and what? I said, no, he got done wrong, not you. Keep your hands off of it. But I've talked to that kid. I won't mention his name because he's an established rap artist now. And he thanks me. And he said, you were right when you told me a lot of what I was thinking was the right way. I had heard when I was 8 or 9 years old from my favorite 13-year-old aunt.
Yeah. And so when these record companies, they sign these young kids, the parents don't know the legal lingo in the contract. The kids don't know. They can barely read them themselves. And then the record companies just say, okay, this is the image we want to fit you in.
Right.
And this is, we're going to give you so much money. Now play the game. And because they've never had anything, they jump on the money that not all money is good money. And they don't realize
it's
that.
like, okay, let's also back off too. Sometimes there's something else going. This thing about street cred. I won't mention his name, but I knew his late mother pretty well. About 20 years ago, we were working on a community development project. She had a master's degree. She was working on a PhD, and she said that her not young son, he's not young now. You see him all the time. I won't say who he is.
All right.
But he was a real smart kid, and he was in a certain California city at the time. They did a thing about changing things around. So when he got into school, he got assigned to, there were only 2 other people that looked like him. And as a result, he started getting what he felt was mistreatment. So he, bold kid, and he started doing what he needed to do to get street cred, and he winds up being one of the foremost rap artists that, well, I won't tell on who he is, but not necessarily bad, but he was brilliant. But what he went along with trying to get street cred, which is one of the main problems.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I heard stuff. This is back in the 50s. It was got a job, shot it out, got a job, you know.
Yeah.
Or tell your hoodlum friends outside you ain't got time to take a ride. Get in that kitchen, let the pans go shake, rattle, and roll. You got some chores. Put out the cat, bring in the dog, you know, take out the trash. Or I got lots of money because I just got paid. Oh, I wish I had somebody, etc. And it's morphed into total dysfunction now. And that is a bad thing because we had this thing that started just at the end of the Johnson administration where instead of getting federal money, aid to the federally dependent children because your kids needed something, you had kids to get the check.
Yeah, I remember
check
that.
became something to support yourself. And grandmama, one of several, would take care of the kids because they were feeling guilty about certain things. And the check became a way of what was perceived as female adulthood in certain circles. So this started it. Well, I'll tell you another anecdote to illustrate this, but it became something out there, the landscape that became part of how do I support and survive myself, and all of the good women that are working hard, that love their children, etc. You have some that hate the fathers and don't love the children. They don't even really love themselves. The children have been basically a check. Now, 1994, I had something of a family in my court. All of them the adults were all charged with felony drug and theft offenses.
Oh, man.
I had a 57-year-old woman. I had her 43-year-old daughter born when she was 14. The 43-year-old daughter had a 34-year-old daughter born 1 week shy of her 10th birthday. The 34-year-old daughter had a 21-year-old daughter in front of me. The 21-year-old daughter had an 11-year-old child pregnant with her second child.
Wow.
Okay, so the 11-year-old already had one. Now, I brought some doctors in and they said, in a high stress area, the female starts having her menses earlier due to the stress. And I started looking carefully at the records of some of my female probationers, and they started having children at 10, 11, 12 years old. And the juvenile court locally at the time was doing absolutely nothing to bring in these fathers and charge them with the criminal offense for having knocked up a 11-year-old, 12-year-old. And then I found out something worse, and this has been 30 years ago. I was sentencing this guy for pedophilia. He had been sleeping with and gotten this 11-year-old girl, 12-year-old girl impregnated, and he was 28. And I put the mother on the stand, and I'm saying, wait a minute, ma'am, you're telling the court this was your idea? And she's telling me all her friend girls said, what's wrong with her? She had a grown woman at the house. Why wasn't she getting a check? So she had this 28-year-old guy come by, 26 at the time guy come by and sleep with her daughter until she got pregnant so they could get a check. So the guy is crying and I'm unloading on him.
Right.
And he says he doesn't understand what the problem was. He was born when his mother was 14 and his big brother was born when their mama was 12. What did he do wrong?
Wow.
So you look at this and you say, whoa, time out. We have to do something about this poison. And if we aren't careful, it'll get worse. So rather than duty, honor, obligation, you just have, I don't care, somebody else's problem. I can do what I want to do. And I even, to show you how bad that kind of line of thought goes, I got a standing ovation from an assembly, about 250 men and women in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers out in Los Angeles. I spoke to them on Veterans Day one time. I got a standing ovation. You know what for? I said, your slogan is wrong. Not be all you can be, because you can be a damn fool. Be all you should be.
That's right.
Well, you've dropped a lot of nuggets and a lot of gold this morning. Give us some information on where people can catch you, because I see you all over the places. But for my audience, which is mixture of disabled, blind people and people in Europe, for some reason, a lot of people in Europe like watching this show. Tell people where they can find you on other platforms.
Okay, here, you can get me on Twitter at Judge Joe Brown TV. And finally, since Musk took over, within the week after I'd been denied for 6 years, they gave me the check. Okay.
All right.
Also, you can catch me on The Real Dana. We do that several times a week. And on Fridays, you can dial into 929-477 1167. That's area code 929-477-1167. And that will be 4 o'clock Eastern Standard to about 7 Eastern Standard. And you can listen in. First 2 hours, we will have guests. And in the last hour, Valerie Denise Jones, who is the head honcho for that, she's the producer and director. She calls it the Hunger Games, where it's all lines are open and sort of a free for all. It gets entertaining.
Yes, definitely. Well, and
also one other thing. I'm running for mayor of Memphis, JJB for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee in 2023. Send Brown downtown and take back your town. And starting next week, we will have up some sites, Cash App and other stuff. You can send in contributions to help make Memphis a mecca for this country.
Amen.
For this century. And the other thing, in addition to service, I sell sauce.
Yes.
So if you want some of the best barbecue sauce you can get, Judge Joe Brown, JJB, barbecue, BBQ, JJBBBQ.com, and get yourself some. I would suggest a 3-pack since it's most economical with the shipping.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I got that in the description, and for the people on Rumble, you got that as well. And man, we just really appreciate you coming on the show. Let people know. Click like, subscribe. We've got a bunch of people that have subscribed to the show. So hey, thank you for subscribing. And Joseph Brand, wish you. Oh, when is election gonna happen? I mean, is it
the election is October next year,
2023? Okay,
2023.
Okay, so people who watch the show throughout the year, you know, the vote is in 2023. So we really appreciate you, and I guess we'll see you tomorrow with some other things concerning DeSantis and Trump, and what dirt does Trump have on DeSantis? And I could name a few things about the red flag that DeSantis likes, and how he arrested a lot of those black felons for voting, but that's for tomorrow. So appreciate you, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.